We also have international members that are joining us, and they will be introduced to you during the course of the day. So without wasting time, the event today is about cybersecurity awareness, and we are having a dialogue on cybersecurity with the purpose of creating an awareness in the country, specifically in KwaZulu-Natal, on issues related to cyber. Thank you for taking time from your busy schedules to join this dialogue. October was a Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and we have been having a variety of activities, including lectures, workshops, cybersecurity awareness campaigns over the month of October, just to raise awareness on the importance of cybersecurity and to encourage that culture of savviness in terms of protecting ourselves in as far as cyber issues are concerned, and protecting ourselves from cyber criminals. So without wasting time, I would like to request the Deputy Chairperson of the Moses Kotane Institute, Mr. Tinta Tsibane, to join us and give us a welcoming note. Thank you.
Okay, so check through you. May I please get a...
If we can cross over to Mr. Tsibane. Mr. Tsibane, I can see you. If you can kindly unmute yourself. Sis Zama, please assist. We apologize for technical glitches. I can see Mr. Tsibane.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can.
Hello, Chair?
Yes, we can hear you. Okay. Yes.
Nonetheless, we'll just continue. My name is Tinta Tsibane. I'm the Deputy Chairperson of the board of the. So, we're standing in for our chairperson. The board was unable to join us. Ms. Hong. I wanted to welcome all colleagues, officials from the department, our stakeholder, guests, and I think we'll find out to say what protocol as well. Cybersecurity has turned it into a need. and can no longer be taken lightly in the nation. South Africa currently has the third highest number of cybercrime victims worldwide, and continuously loses more than 2.2 billion annually to cyber attacks. As such, KwaZulu-Natal, as a province, is also not immune to such attacks, as there are no borders in cyberspace. The hunting ground for criminals has not front of the computer. In this Cybersecurity Awareness Month, as the Moses Kotane Institute is hosting Provincial Cyber Awareness Month Dialogue under the theme MKI Security KZN Cyberspace. To instill cyber savviness of KZN economic sector, business and citizens. During this dialogue, MKI aims at driving solution conversation, provincial and security leading industries. Some of the discussion points are there differences with regards to cyber attack targeting public and private sectors? Why would we worry about our information security? What is the biggest cybersecurity threat to us right now? What are the challenges regarding loss of data and restoration of the process of authentication? What are the provincial compliance obligations regarding sensitive data? And lastly, what are the best practices and approaches to network intrusion and the detection and prevention? Securing KZN cyberspace in the private sector. The KZN province, among the rest of other provinces, has witnessed vicious cyber attacks causing major shutdowns of business operations in some instances for weeks and even months, in some instances. These affect a vast number of economic activities. The question we need to ask ourselves, is there a need for more stringent cybersecurity forces to prevent and seek out cyber attackers and ensure the restoration of our economic activities? The desired effect of stricter regulations has been to make monitoring online activities and gathering other user information more challenging. Also, what is the actual effect of legislation on the POPI or legislation such as POPI on cybersecurity of large organizations? Also, from your point of view, what will it take to secure provincial cyberspace and the provincial economy and this economy? Which sectors need more attention in KZN regarding provincial cybersecurity and its safety, such as manufacturing, agriculture, rural and tourism economy, marine economy, maritime, and ocean economies, etc. Do you think sector-based communities, such as separate from the finance sector, responsible for cybersecurity information and incident sharing platforms to probe and fight cybersecurity? Also, under the themes of securing KZN in cyberspace and in the public sector, we'd like to look at cybersecurity, which spans not only national, but there's also international. As I said before, there are no boundaries on the internet, and no jurisdictional regulation, which makes it increasingly complex to govern and control. It can be highly challenging aspect of the age of 4IR to determine public policies for limitless entity. South Africa has introduced various legislations such as National Cybersecurity Policy Framework, the POPI Act, and the Cyber Bill to ensure that cybersecurity is regulated. Focusing on national governance and national regulations, would you, in your opinion, say that this is sufficient? And are we getting there as a country? for academia, provincial leaders, lawmakers, and as well as local industries, what could be the best way to approach security in the public cyberspace for the benefit of provincial constituencies regarding education and training skills, facilitation for newer solutions and existing solutions. How can the province improve and keep cybersecurity, information security, and other related aspects? Would you recommend promotion of human-centric security awareness culture? Which other methods could positively contribute to this? I think, Chair, in short, that's maybe some of the few questions, hoping that they'll be able to spark some of the debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kotane, and thank you for taking time to connect wherever you are. We understand that you had challenges earlier today, but thank you so much for that warm welcoming note. I note that this room is full of experts in either innovation or tech side of things, and we, the laymen, we hope that we will be educated even more today by having the panel of experts amongst us. So we are quite happy that we are joined by the members that are seated here today. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for coming. Without wasting time, may I request that we be may I request Professor Snail Kamtuze to just to join us virtually and just give us a few words in as far as the cyber issues in the country. I think he's going to give us the overview of the country in terms of the cyber security issues, cyber attacks, cyber protection, and so on. So may I request that Professor Kamtuze join us? Is Professor available? Okay, in the interest of time, let's move on so that we don't have too many gaps in our program, because we are trying to cut time. Instead of finishing at 6:30 as initially scheduled, we are aiming to finish at least 4:30 and then depart at 5 o'clock. So may I request that Mr. Sihlem Kize, who is here in his capacity as a representative for Honorable MEC Ravi Pillay, to join us. Mr. Mkize is going to be our keynote speaker for today, and Mr. Mkize is currently the DDG in the Department of Economic Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs. And thank you very much, Mr. Mkize, for making time.
Thank you, Program Director, Dr. Ellison, and the CEO, who's the CEO of Moses Kotane Institute. Let me start by recognizing the dignitaries who have joined us today, starting with the Deputy Chairperson of Moses Kotane Institute, Mr. Kibane, the Director General of the province, Dr. Nonhlanhla Mkhize, who has joined us virtually. Also the CEO of Moses Kotane Institute and the senior executives present, all the panel discussants who are with us, the MKI graduates, Professor Snail, and all the delegates who have joined us physically and also virtually, both locally and internationally. Let me start by appreciating the opportunity that you have afforded us to engage with you in this very important platform. But let me commence by extending the apology from our Honorable MEC, Mr. Ravi Pillay. He would have really loved to be with us today, but as we all know that they are busy preparing for the elections that are taking place next week. So he is currently engaged. He could not be with us. So he asked me to deliver some few points just to stimulate discussions and debate during this platform. I think it's appropriate that during the Cybersecurity Month, October, that we hold the event of this nature. ETA, which is the department that I come from, which is Department of Economic Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs, we are charged with the responsibility of growing the economy of the province, the economy that will create jobs, and the economy that will be globally competitive. So our portfolio as ETA, it's very wide, as it includes supporting the SMMEs, supporting the industries, the investment attraction, export development, business retention, tourism, regulations of regulating the liquor industry and the gaming and betting. I think earlier on I saw the CEO economic zones such as the Dube Trade Port and Richards Bay IDZ, and also the industrial parks, both publicly owned, like the ones at Sitebe, Mataden, and Izakeni, which is managed by Itala, our public entity, and also those that are privately owned. We're also responsible for the green economy and also the ICT, which is closer to the subject that we are talking about. The recently approved economic recovery plan for the province, it actually emphasizes the need to increase the broadband connectivity in the province and bridge the digital divide. Our public entity and our host today, Moses Kotane Institute, as it has been reported, they've been running a series of cybersecurity awareness campaigns during this month, which have been targeted at various stakeholders, including the SMMEs. So this event is a culmination of a program that was commenced at the beginning of this month. With the increased global connectivity, we are bound to see more and more cybersecurity attack. And also the pandemic that is currently besetting us, it has actually accelerated the rate with which we connect digitally as people and also as institutions. It's quite interesting that government, I think we all know government, we even call bureaucrats because of the paperwork, because of us not being actively in the digital space and using the ICT. But now with the COVID-19, we are seeing government actually actively getting into the space. We now meet virtually as government, Microsoft Teams, even our provincial executive council, the cabinet. You find that more and more of their meetings are now held virtually. Then that's where the risks come from. Like take, for example, the cabinet. The cabinet discusses the top secret information, most sensitive information for the province. So if we are not aware about the threats and the risk, it means there is a lot of danger with us. 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 And in this regard, the unfortunate events that befell Transnet in July this year, I think was an indication and an eye-opener to all of us about how devastating these cyber attacks can be. We all know that Transnet manages our ports, the rail, and the pipeline. So this attack actually affected the cargo movement, the container terminal, and the operation of Transnet. it's the engine of our economy, because if you look at the cargo that is moved from Durban, from various parts of the country and also the continent, it really is quite mammoth. And you could see with the complaints that were received about that challenge that was faced. It is also in this regard that President Ramaphosa in May 2021 signed into law the Cyber Crimes and Cybersecurity Bill. It's now an act which is geared to effectively manage and regulate this important industry. We want to emphasize that every company and every institution is under risk of cyber attack. It's not only few big companies, it affects everyone, SMMEs, informal economy, individuals, and so forth. When the cyber attacks attend, we tend to look at the vulnerabilities of the technologies that we are using. We see organizations wanting to buy more apps and gadgets to protect their information without necessarily also looking at the people who are working there in terms of making them much more conscious and aware about the role that they can play to also mitigate and prevent these cyber attacks. Human error has been found to be a key contributing factor to these cyber attacks. So this awareness month, it then becomes critical to also look at what we can do as individuals to mitigate these things. We are talking also about the awareness of simple things such as protecting your password. We are always told to do that, and I know it's very frustrating to have to change your password quite often, and you still have people who've got password 1, 2, 3, 4, and really we are very vulnerable if we keep on continue doing that, not leaving your gadgets unattended. We still see people leaving their laptops, leaving their iPads unattended, but those are the things and behaviors that we really need to desist. We need to take personal responsibility and also know about the online defensive skills that we can use to protect ourselves. You will all know that about 5 years ago, we used to pray into saying that if I am in a situation where I am robbed, you will want to protect your wallet, into saying the criminals must not take your wallet. But these days, what do you protect the most? It's your cell phone, because the cell phone, it carries almost your life now. You are happy if they take your wallet and leave you with the cell phone. So it just indicates the importance in terms of where we are. As provincial government, we have started rolling a number of initiatives that if we do not look into these matters, they will be affected. Like one of the things we are very proud of that we launched last year is the automated online business application for people who want to apply for business licenses, that you don't have to go to the municipality, but you can do the whole process online. So we've done it with quite a number of municipalities, and imagine if that system can be affected, and it will really affect quite a number of businesses. So I think it is in that regard that we really will want to thank the Moses Kotane Institute for leading this very important campaign of sensitizing our businesses, our people, our big companies, our investors about the cybersecurity attacks. We also encourage the discussions of this nature, that they are very important to actually look at how we can mitigate these challenges and protect our citizens and businesses against cyber attacks. Program Director, I thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mkhize. Thank you for that wonderful keynote. I would like to acknowledge Bauland Security They are currently exhibiting outside of the premises, and we would like to thank them for joining us today. But I must also mention that Baulan Security has been instrumental in this campaign because they've been conducting lectures, awareness lectures on cybersecurity. So we really would like to thank Baulan Security in that regard. But not in addition to that, I would like to really thank the distinguished guests that have joined us today. Amongst us, we have Mr. Sandile Mahlaba from Microsoft. We have Mr. Ngobeni from CSIR. We have Mr. Mbata from City of eThekwini. We have Prof. Thakur from DUT. And those are the panel members that will be talking about cybersecurity in the space of public sector. But over and above that, we have a panel that will be talking about dialoguing about the cybersecurity space in private sector. And with us, we have Mr. Samuel from Cisco. We have Mr. Ace from Baulan Security. We have Mr. Pile from Fortinet. And we also have Mr. Van der Merwe, as well as Mr. Fairbank from Datacentric. So we really would like to thank the distinguished guests who have joined us today. And without wasting time, I must apologize for Prof. Kamtuze Snail. I've been advised that he's having connectivity issues. So we will skip that item totally until I'm advised otherwise. But I think let's zoom straight into our panel discussions. We will be having two panel sessions, one for the public sector and another for the private sector. And then we will have just a short issuing of certificates from our learners, our SMMEs that are graduating from the Microsoft Emerging Black Partner program for KZN. It's just a short session, and then we will have Dr. Fikile Ndlovu giving us the closing remarks, and after that we will be playing the video of the companies that are exhibiting whilst we're networking and having refreshments. So that is the program for today, ladies and gentlemen. Without wasting time, may I request Advocate Mapipa, who is an executive for Moses Kotane Corporate Services. She's an executive manager, but she's also an advocate of the High Court of South Africa. And it's well fitting that she comes and joins us in this session because she is very much in the forefront in terms of the protection and security issues. Being a lawyer that she is, we thank her for availing herself to facilitate the first session or the first panel, which is on cybersecurity in the public sector. Thank you, Advocate. You may introduce your panel.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ellenson, the COO of the Moses Kotane Institute. Good afternoon, colleagues. Good afternoon to our guests sitting here in this conference room. Good afternoon to our guests at home or wherever they are. The session for today that I will be facilitating is entitled Securing a KZN Cyberspace in the Public Sector. My panel members, whom I am kindly requesting to come up and join me on stage, is Lucas Ledwaba from Microsoft, and Mr. Sipho Mahlaba from Microsoft, Mr. Sipho Ngobeni from CSIR, Mr. Sandile Mbata from eThekwini, Professor Colin Thakur from DUT, but I only have 4 seats. Okay, if my guests can kindly come up to the stage. Thank you. Mr. Mahlaba? I saw Mr. Mahlaba. Mr. Ngobeni? Mr. Mbata, Sandile Mbata. Prof. Colin Taka. Can the colleagues assist with the locating of the panel members? Thank you. Okay, in the interest of time, I will pause this session and allow the next session through the program director with her permission. Let me just step down for it to proceed.
All right, thank you very much, Advocate. Mr. Mahlaba, you just missed your session. But we will give you an opportunity later on. May I request the panel for private sector, which is facilitated by Ms. Bryn Gerson. Ms. Bryn is a senior manager on ICT at the Dubai Trade Port, and Dubai Trade Port is our sister entity. Ms. Bryn, may I request that you introduce your panel? Thank you.
Thank you. Hi. I am going to have a challenge because my panel are all here in person and there are 5. So we are going to need another person. And also we have a replacement or a substitute. So maybe if I can ask the panel members if I could possibly organize another chair. Okay, cool. Right, so I am going to be chairing or introducing the panel for the private sector, and my panel are Mr. Arshad Samuels from Cisco. You could come up. Thank you. Mr. Carl Ace from Bowline Security. Mr. Paran Pillay from Fortinet. Mr. Paul Fairbank from Datacentrics, and Yoshan, I don't have, they're going to bring another chair. No, we need another one. Also from Datacentrics, replacing Mr. van der Merwe. I'll facilitate from here, yes. Right. I know we'll have to just move things around a little bit. Awesome. All right, and if you don't mind, if I can just ask the panel to introduce themselves and who they are, because I kind of just called everybody up very quickly. All right, if you want to start, please at the end.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Yasin Najib. I'm representing Fortinet today. Fortinet is a cybersecurity company, and we're quite active in KZN space, in private sector, public sector. And I'm happy to be here and share my knowledge with you.
Good afternoon. My name is Paul Fairbank. I'm a pre-sales network and security specialist from Datacentrics, actively involved in the private sector and the public sector for KZN. Thank you.
Good afternoon, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, friends and family. My name is Carl Ace, Bowline Security. We're based here at Dubai Trade Port. We offer integrated security solutions. Yes, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Arshad Samuels. I'm the SecOps lead for Africa from Cisco, and that's covering all verticals across the continent.
And we're going to have to share a mic, sorry.
Good afternoon, all. Yoshan Bejnat, also from Datacentrics, Senior Account Manager handling both private and public sector.
Thank you very much. So the KZN province is obviously, along with the rest of the provinces, and I think the discussion around the port is a great one, has been subject to a lot of cyber attacks recently, and we've seen an increase in cyber attacks over the recent months. Now, one of the main impacts of that is definitely the impact, and a huge negative impact on the economic activities. So we've got a question for the panel is, and I'm making a really loud noise. Is there a need for more stringent cybersecurity to identify, detect and prevent cyber attacks and to ensure the restoration of economic activities? So one of the things I'm going to just ask, and I'm just expanding on that, is what is the role that penetration and vulnerability assessments play to identify areas of security risk in the industry and in private sector specifically? Anyone?
Yeah, I'll start.
Paul.
I'll start. Paul Fairbank from Data Centrics. Good afternoon, everyone. I think with the impact of COVID, we've seen from the private sector that businesses have had to adapt very quickly, which has led to an increase in workforce from home, which has expanded the threat landscape from technology perspective, that users are now accessing corporate infrastructure from a coffee shop or whatever access they have, and that's expanded the threat landscape for the threat actors, which are the people that are looking to compromise the networks, and now they have a much wider space to access that. And the corporate entities have published more applications externally to their business to make it more available for the remote workforce, and that has required more published applications, and the testing and vulnerability scanning of those applications is more critical now, because they're obviously publishing more applications that were previously internally only, and there's nobody from the business perspective that really covers it. They look at it and say, okay, we need this application published now, but they don't go through the UAT where they check if it's actually a vulnerable application. Thank you.
Okay. Carl, do you want to expand on that? You were nodding quite a bit.
Yeah, I will definitely support Paul's view. You know, the firewall has become fluid, so there's no more on-prem firewall anymore. And testing from a penetration test point of view and vulnerability assessment is very important to check what weaknesses are evident and then give the relevant teams a chance to plug those holes.
Okay. Do we have any takers?
I think just to further expand on what Paul said, I think because of COVID, there's been a push to get out these applications really quickly. And generally what we've seen in the market is because there was such a demand and time frame to get it out to market was so short, the security was overlooked. And we have a lot of applications out there now which are vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And the only way to fix that is obviously by vulnerability management, scanning those. And I think, vendors got to play a part as well as companies, because companies generally want their staff to work and they don't really worry about the security side. So I think from a vulnerability perspective, it's important that the private sector continuously do scans on their applications, on the networks, and that type of thing.
Okay. Arshad, do you?
Yeah, so I'm in absolute agreement with that, right? With the workforce becoming a lot more remote, organizations have had to start looking at technologies or frameworks, sort of like SASE or Secure Access Services Edge. And with all of these new applications in the cloud, security has become a lot more relevant, and hence the importance of pen testing.
Okay. Yoshin?
I agree with all the colleagues. Definitely with COVID, as Paul mentioned, we've had to scale so quickly, and sometimes security falls on the back end for organizations. And pen testing and vulnerability assessments give you that insight into where you have possible holes that needs plugging that's often overlooked. So definitely agree.
All right. So We've had a lot of studies done recently on things like the exploits or the top exploits that allow ransomware and those types of things to compromise the environments. And I think our HRD was mentioning things like looking at the people within the organization. And the top 4 things that actually came out of one of the recent studies in order were social engineering, phishing, RDP access, unpatched software, and password attacks, funny enough. So how do you feel, or to what extent, again, to anyone in the panel, but then everyone in the panel, to what extent do you feel that employee awareness and culture impact the organization's level of security? Goshen?
I think if you look at recently, there was an article out on IT Web where Investec actually employed a head of end user awareness training to facilitate programs for the employees to educate them on cybersecurity attacks, phishing attacks, social engineering attacks, etc. So I think it begins with the end user. As much as you put firewalls, yes, the firewalls fluid, as a colleague mentioned, etc. You put it all this, but your end user device, that's where the main vulnerability is. And by creating those end user training programs and platforms to make them more comfortable and understand, is a brilliant start in terms of end user awareness training. So Investec is a brilliant example, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Yeah, can I touch on that a bit? So I'm in absolute agreement with you. Threat actors would typically find the route of least resistance in order to infiltrate an organization. And cybersecurity awareness plays a huge part in this, right? And that's typically because organizations, up until now, believe that it's more of a nice to have rather than a necessity. So we need to start by educating organizations around how fragile the end user is, and then to take it a step further and educate that end user. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Whether you on the cabling team, whether you're a granny at home and you're only using a mobile like phone device, or you are high tech, C-suite level individual, the social engineering attacks is definitely on the rise, and because we were only taught how to cross the road well and not how to navigate cyberspace securely, we often find ourselves falling victim to things that when you, on hindsight, you're like, hey, but I should have double checked this. But the criminal is working 24 hours. And as security detail, we need to also get our people to think about that more than just 8 to 5, because they can call you at 8 in the night, tell you to share your ID number with them, and then next morning all your money is out your bank account, just like that.
With the recent national regulations that have been implemented in South Africa, mainly POPIA, one of the things that has done is that's brought cybersecurity awareness to the C-levels. I think that over the couple of years, it's sort of been a struggle because it's always been a grudge purchase to purchase security. And now with the new regulator, it's brought that level in, and they now are engaging in those platforms, and they're able to see that there is a benefit to the organization. And I think the awareness that will filter down from that, I think, is very beneficial.
I think in terms of cybersecurity awareness, we're seeing much more activity from executives in private sector where they're willing to, send their staff for training, do training and that type of thing. And I guess as much as it's unfortunate that we have all of these cybersecurity issues, the one positive spin-off is that more and more people are getting educated now. And I think if that trajectory continues and it becomes more part of the culture of a company, then we'll probably see more cyber threats in the future. Yeah.
Now, if we could just get people to stop answering the name of their dog on those Facebook searches, literally giving out the password. I don't know if anyone does that, but the name of your dog and the color of your first car, and literally social engineering to find out your password, by the way. Please don't answer those. Okay, so layers of security are quite important. And from your point of view, what will it take to secure the provincial cyberspace and its economy? I mean, you look at things like, and you mentioned that cyber criminals don't sleep. Whereas IT professionals do need to sometimes, look, I do realize that they think that we don't sleep, but we do need to sometimes. And I know that more and more of us are starting in both public and private entities, starting to look at things like security operations centers, etc. But what type of things should we be looking at to secure our entities as public, as private entities, full stop. And bearing in mind that we need to be looking at layering security. I mean, we've spoken about the social engineering, but there's not any one entry point from a security or one exit point from an information perspective. I mean, yeah. So you guys are the experts. Let's go.
Yeah, let me start. So that's an interesting question, right? Because when addressing security, you've got to look at it sort of as an artichoke, right? It's different levels. So you peel away one level and you secure on the next level, and you peel away that level and you're still secure, right? And that's where we start looking at technologies like SASE, and I've mentioned it before, where it sort of consolidates different layers of security and it's easily consumable from the cloud. So gone are the days where organizations would look at a capex expenditure, right?
Yeah.
They're now looking to save every buck they've had, especially with COVID.
Yeah.
So when you start looking at SASE, it's an architecture that allows you to operate on an OPEX budget or an OPEX model, where you're able to consume all of these different security services at different levels at any given time.
Okay. And then you don't have to budget for the ransom. Just checking.
To expand on a colleague comments, I agree as well. Also, I mean, looking at, not all organizations have the capital or investment to have like a full-on security operations center, like you mentioned, like a SOC. So, you can look at sort of a managed services for the smaller organizations, systems that's logging what's happening on your firewall, which makes sense to the C-level executives in the company so they can see what's going on to give you insight as well. Patch management is key. We always say patch, patch, patch. You can have the best security systems in the world. If your systems are not patched, you're going to be vulnerable to every single hacker out there. So it's just those little nuances that we need to be cognizant of as well.
Yeah, 24-hour by 7 days, 365, definitely in support of that. We're seeing industries come together to put their resources together to have a 24-hour operation center. We're seeing more and more integration between physical, video, and cyber, all to give us more intelligence about our customers and their environments. So it's definitely something that clients should look at. It's definitely, whether you're public or private, but it's definitely something that should be looked at.
One of the most important layers, which I think sort of everyone overlooks, and Mr. McKee's raised that earlier, is the user layer with the passwords. So what there is available now that people look at is a layer for security on the password side, is they actually integrate their systems with the online breach databases. And if your user puts in a password, it actually does a verify lookup to see if the password that the user has chosen actually exists in one of these breach databases, and then doesn't allow the user to select the password. So millions and millions of passwords in the database, and you end up with almost up to 20 characters for a password, which is quite a hefty password for the users to remember. But unfortunately, that's one of the levels that the guys are pushing for these days.
I actually just want to ask a follow-up question on that and possibly just maybe make mention of it. Most of your phones have the ability to check if your passwords that you've stored in your phone have actually been breached. And how many people make use of that? Just for the passwords that you've stored in your phone, and how many people actually go through that or have it reported to you that you've got a breached password or a previously breached password or a password that you've used in multiple places? Because those are little risk things that most users don't actually make use of, that are available to everybody who owns a phone. And those are things that are actually quite critical to be looking at just as a general user of technology. And I go through mine all the time and check them because Gmail gets breached all the time, Facebook gets breached all the time.
Yeah.
So those are things that you should be looking at because you keep your work stuff on your phone.
Yeah, just a comment there on that, Bryn. I would definitely encourage private or public, just to start encouraging them and saying passwords are dead. You got to look at multi-factor authentication. You got to look at
MFA.
two-factor authentication, because supercomputers today can break any password within 30 minutes, whether it's characters, whether it's numbers, whether it's a combination of that. It's no more a big thing now. Yeah.
And then you're budgeting for the ransom.
Ironically enough, if you apply in the private sector for cybersecurity insurance, one of the minimum requirements is MFA. They will not insure the company unless you actually have multi-factor authentication.
Yeah, just to expound on the Security Operations Center, I think we're seeing a lot of demand for services like that. I think it's driven from a technology perspective, risk perspective, but a lot of audit compliance requirements which are pushing that. But the truth is, like from in the KZN market, even on the managed services side, it's generally mostly the big corporates that can afford it, but cybersecurity affects even the small businesses as well. And I think between public sector and private sector, there needs to be some sort of assistance or grant or something where these services also become affordable to the smaller business, the SMB, because ultimately, I mean, if one big corporate is hacked versus 10 or 20 smaller ones, I mean, the economic result could be the same in terms of brand value and that type of thing. So I think private-public partnership is critical, especially if you want to have SOCs and that type of thing for businesses in the province.
Thank you. I must admit that one of the things that we found critical from our data center environment as GB Trade Board is a SOC, and a proactive SOC, 24/7, 365, not reactive, because security for our clients is tantamount. And one of the things that came out of it was knowing that there was ongoing denial of service attacks on client targeted. And being able to let the client know in the middle of the night that he had an attempt on his hardware. So that's critical. Right, so with the ever-increasing security landscape threat, we spoke about it earlier on, and I think Carl, you also mentioned it. Starting to focus on the home network environment, and I think the colleagues from Moses Kotane all laugh about my kettle that I tell Alexa to boil. But I'm very much a smart home type of IT geek, and I live in a smart home. But it becomes a challenge when you have multiple IT professionals that work from the same smart home. And that changes the threat landscape for anybody, because all of you are sitting at home working from home, but you're professionals at a senior level mostly in your organizations or in government. And what that means is that your laptop is going and your phone is going from a very secure environment at work to a probably insecure environment at home, on no longer enterprise-grade hardware to home-grade hardware. And in my world, We have a number of, look, I've got a lot of children. I'm one of those people that had 4 very quickly when I was young, and I'm a granny. So I have a lot of children, and I've got a lot of people in my house. But my house is constantly getting DDoS attacks or attempted DDoS attacks, which is a denial of service. And my children are gamers as well, which means they irritate people online regularly. And people are trying to attack us all the time, which is great because I live in a smart home, which means that they can get access to my cameras if they get in. They can see what's going on in my house. They can get access to my alarm system. They can turn my lights on and off, and they can boil my kettle for me, which is actually a benefit. But being able to see into my kitchen when I'm dancing around cooking dinner is not that great. Fortunately, I live with a security professional. So the challenge is that you guys are all going home to your home off of your enterprise network. What does that change? How does that change the landscape? How does that change how we should be looking at cybersecurity? And what industry sectors should we be looking at in KZN to be protecting? Or is it an industry sector? Or should we be looking at protecting more the home environments or more moving outside of the corporate rather than, yeah.
So let me take part of that question, right? Because it's a loaded question.
It's a loaded question.
I think the real question is how do you protect that corporate issued device, that corporate asset, when they're off that corporate network? And we as Cisco and OEM say that you need to start looking at technologies that would allow you to deploy a micro agent on that corporate issued device that enforces corporate policy on that device, even when it is off your corporate network. So we start looking at protection from a DNS level, because you'd find that most attacks occur there, right?
Yeah.
When that corporate device accesses the internet, because it's DIA, you become vulnerable. So we're saying if you protect that device at a DNS level, you are protected whether you are on or off your corporate network because the enforcement is still there.
Sorry, I'll expand on that. So majority of the deployments over the last 10, 15 years, everything was on premise. And you had to, if you took your laptop to outside and you had to work, you never got the latest updates or the patches or whatever the case until you actually return to the office. So what the security landscape now requirement is that expanding on that, everything is now delivered from the cloud. So when you do go home, your machine is still able to connect to the cloud and get the updates from that stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe just a comment from me is who's responsible for that? I think as telcos, as cloud service providers, we've pushed a lot of the responsibility to the end user. Yet our end users are not very well aware. So I think we can also play a lot of more responsibility must be given to our telcos and our cloud service providers to actually secure that home network, that last mile connection, so that we are less vulnerable at home.
Yeah, I think in terms of home securities, we've seen in last year, a lot of the ISPs who do generally provide internet connectivity to homes, they sort of selling a lot of more firewalls.
Yeah.
And I think they're getting into a space now more with selling security as a service. So, without a home user having to have to invest in a piece of equipment, they block it at an ISP level, where they're blocking all of the stuff before it enters your network. But obviously that's a costly exercise as well. And so generally not affordable to, everyone's an internet user at home now. You know? So again, it comes down to affordability from that perspective. From an industry perspective in KZN, I think we're seeing a lot more focus on the OT side now. A lot of manufacturing companies, we're actually working with quite a few now where previously those networks were air gapped. So the corporate network was, one side and their operational technology network was on the other. It didn't talk to each other. But I think after COVID, with a lot of people having to have to work remotely from home. Those guys obviously had to get access to those critical networks, and now we're seeing a lot of those networks joining, and they're not air-gapped anymore. And it's surprising. There's a lot of, we meet clients, and it's scary to see the state of security in KZN, in very critical environments, in public sector and private sector. I think it's a neglected area. And coming back to cybersecurity awareness at a C level, I think those are the guys who's going to have to push it, because I think the guys on the ground and stuff don't want to get too involved because of the risk that it takes or carries. But I think with compliance requirements, I think eventually that will get pushed up, but I think it needs to be done faster.
I think, yeah, just the closing comment is that, again, there is a space for the telcos to assist, etc., in securing the home users network or the work from home person, which we've all become these days. But at the end of the day, it boils down to the end user and the awareness that that end user has. And, I personally, my opinion is that, you've got to invest in training in your end users to clue them up, read the links, look at it, how to say read, because that's where the first vulnerability is when you click on that link, and that opens up that gateway, and then that bot comes in and sits there for months and you don't even know it's there. Without getting too technical, but end user awareness training is key in any organization, be it public, private, SMME, QSE, EME. I think that's the message that we need to take away from all of this.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we're going to end this panel here. Thank you, everybody. I think the critical takeaway from this is everybody in this room and online is responsible for your own organization's security. And that's it. We're all responsible for the security. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Space or private sector. And whilst the other official activities are going on the side, if we can just please come down so that to allow the other listeners to hear us. Thank you very much. It is quite scary that we take things for granted as the public, as the workers, as the citizens, and so on. It is quite scary that you find yourself in a position where someone cracks into your system to such an extent that they want ransom. It is quite scary that we are still careless about the links that we press, incoming links, either on email or on WhatsApp and so on. It's quite scary that we still, we are so curious to an extent that we don't think twice, about opening links. Also, we get a lot of calls where people are saying, please press 9, please press 0, and then the next thing your money is gone. We find ourselves vulnerable in situations where you still have your grandmother, grandmother's name as your password. And everybody knows your grandmother's name, but you still have your grandmother's name as your password. It's quite scary that we are still at that level. But on the contrary, we as people generally, especially people who are not that tech savvy, find ourselves in a situation where we actually cannot, it's difficult for us to create complex passwords. And when we create complex passwords, it's difficult to forget, that password where you have the asterisks and the signs and the @ and the $ and everything else that the tech people advise us to have on our passwords. So the next thing, we write the passwords down so that we don't forget because it's too complex and it's complicated for us, and that's where such things in such areas put us in a state of vulnerability, and it is our own doing that puts us there. So this session today, as the panel members have stated, is to create further awareness, not just at work but also at home. Be aware, be savvy, protect yourself, even at home. I wonder, lately we have this technology where we use our fingerprints. Some people use faces. We have our fingerprints, everywhere, as passwords, because it's easier than creating a complex password. I wonder if that is not another area of vulnerability. I think the next panel will be able to, now that I've missed the opportunity to ask this question to other panel members, maybe the a panel on public sector will be able to answer this. And also, now talking about public sector, you get a lot of government people having restrictions in terms of the sizes, in terms of, on emails and so on. And then you get literally half of, I'm exaggerating perhaps, but a bigger percentage of government employees use Gmail to receive their emails. And the issue is always, because my size, the size of the document is too big, or the administrator is preventing the document, or whatever the reason is. But generally, people have work email, which never works, and they have the Gmail. They work from the Gmail account. So I wonder if that is not another area of vulnerability, especially in the public sector. So to answer those questions which I've posed, I will again request Advocate Mapipa, the very beautiful lady, to come on stage and call your panel. And I guess this time it's a revised panel. So thank you very much, Advocate.
Thank you, Dr. Ellenson. Apologies for the earlier glitch which prevented this panel to proceed. Greetings again for those who were not here when I greeted everyone connecting remotely and in the house. The panel members that I would like to call up onto the stage is Mr. Ntlagani Pozulu, the CIO of the KZN legislature. I have been advised that he is in the room. Please come up, sir. Mr. Sandile Mahlaba, the provincial executive of, from Microsoft, who is also here with us. Please come up to the stage, sir. Professor Colin Taka from DUT is joining us online. Welcome, Prof. Mr. Sipongo Beni, Cybersecurity Director, also joining us online. Welcome to this cybersecurity event. Welcome, gentlemen. Our topic is securing KZN cyberspace in the public sector. The previous panel has caused goosebumps to some of us, by giving us the awareness of our vulnerability in terms of cybersecurity. Now, it made me think about our public space. As a lawyer, I quickly thought about the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, which has recently been attacked security-wise, cybersecurity-wise. It has been hacked from the Office of the Chief Justice down to our courts in KZN. The whole system of the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development was affected. Our prisons, the correctional services, the Office of the Master of the High Court, where our administration of estates and trusts are administered. So imagine the whole court system has been hacked. So where does that put us? The government, our legislative departments have tried to intervene by enacting the POPIA, the cybersecurity regulations, and there's also a bill that is still pending on cyber crimes, which has been pending for a number of years. So we are still vulnerable. Those pieces of legislation are there. Some are in the process of being made, and the department that makes these laws gets hacked. Yeah, one wonders, where does that put all the other government departments that are linked in terms of IT systems? Because we are all to, for instance, as KZN, we get our monies through the Treasury Department, through the Department of Finance, and they pay all these government departments, who in turn pay all these government entities, and all these payments go through online systems. There are passwords that are being punched when these payments are made, documents that go through when the approval for these payments are made. And then there are people sitting in their cozy offices, in their, using their nice screens, looking at all of these movements and waiting for that opportunity. Now, focusing on the governance of this whole thing, do you think that we are safe? As of obviously we're not safe. Do you think that more can be done? If more can be done, what exactly do you think still needs to be done to protect us in this instance? Thank you.
Thanks, Advocate. I think I'll touch base on the one for the governance. When we look at the cyber security within the public sector, I think before the focus was more on the ICT security, whereby everything was just basic, but we were being audited on whatever we're implementing. However, the things have changed. I look at my organization, which is the legislature, as part of the audit that takes place. There is now some module whereby when they come on site, they just focus on cyber security. So it's no longer, by the way, when you are doing ICT security and then for cyber security. So in terms of governance, I think that's what is going to assist now in terms of ensuring that we've got all the pre-requirements to comply with cyber security. Now, when you look at governance, what is it that needs to be there? As you've already indicated, the bills that are already been enacted. We look at auditors when they come on site in terms of cybersecurity. They want you to have a cybersecurity policy, not just an ICT security. They want you to have the cybersecurity response plan in the event you are being attacked. So once you've got all those documents in place, then when auditors come, they have to check if are you compliant. So that's what now it's now driving the public sector in terms of putting priority in the cybersecurity space, being informed by the requirements that now we are being audited on. Thanks.
I think just to add into what Ubawuzulu was saying, most of these policies and most of the governance that is governing the way our government does do the work is actually replicated back into how we, companies like ourselves, have to really ring fence and build to be able to answer to the minimum that they might be required for government requirements for audit purposes or for security purposes. But then scale it up because now you're becoming more responsible as a company like Microsoft. Invest even further to ensure that the environment that you are exposing our government to is really secured into the level of not just because South African law says, but into a global level. Find most auditability and the security that is fenced around facilities that we use in a physical sense and in terms of it. But the reality of it is all these policies need to cascade up into the global level and ensuring that we are not securing you because you are living in KwaZulu-Natal and you are working in the environment of KwaZulu-Natal, but you are securing you understand some of the reason why cybersecurity had to be legislated and had to be done within the government requirements in some of the governance guidelines of government is really ensuring that you are protecting our information. I think that's a very key part. We mustn't put it because, I mean, sometimes if we look at companies like ourselves and any other company, we might be looking at the profit margin and look at how we're really going to be marketing correctly to do something that can give our good line in profit. But let's just remember that we're doing this just because we're ensuring that, firstly, the information is protected. The perception of information protection, again, is correctly leveraged within society. Because that's what we do. I mean, we are really dealing with the perception. Because it's being a perception of not being safe is what actually makes you not able to do things you're supposed to do as government, not able to move to the environments that will actually advance you and help you to be where you're supposed to be and to trust. So that's why you will hear a very new phenomenon about zero trust, meaning I trust nothing and I start building from there. I don't build as if like Dr. Ellison is actually a very good person, he's got a good heart. When we look at this technology and policies, we really try from zero to say, when there is no trust, there's nothing else to be done. How then do you really build and ring-fence your environment to come back to the level where in any given country policy and all different parts, you are able to be seen as a person who meets the standards required. So it's very interesting in the organization I work for. There is a site where you can even find and download all kinds of qualifications we just have to enter and the acts and legislation from the European Union to the Africa part, to the American side, to the Asian part. We have to meet all those kind of standards. So we don't really end up with the standard of saying, Ubabo Zulu's legislature as part of our clients are protected. But we should be able to meet all standards, including Ubabo Zulu, and ensuring that their environment is ring-fenced correctly according to it. So I wanted just to have that in your mind, saying it's not really being built because Chief Justice's office might have been attacked or might be attacked. It's being built to make sure Chief Justice's offices around the world, UN and everybody else information is protected to the level. And again, zero trust, meaning that I don't have as much, but I should be able to be protected. You are supposed to be.
Okay, so everyone is a suspect until proven otherwise.
At least you understand.
Okay, yeah, let's hear from our online panelists. Prof. Colin Takat, DUT.
Thank you, Colin.
Takur.
I agree with my previous speakers. I think the Company Act was a good start from a government point of view to protect us, especially as we become global players. And in fact, we won't be able to conduct summit if we didn't have the Company Act, so that's great. And we all know that COVID has made us, has been because digital transformation aid, and it has also made the WFM market, the reality. So we all work from home now, and our communication with like bigger, better, open, connected, which means of course we are more visible to cash. So the good thing that we have come with certain terms and conditions, and we need to be aware and be responsible about the good things that come. I would remind you of the attack on the president like Joburg, like Italy, the transnet terrorism. So, we really have some but on the social engineering side, for instance, I mean, this month we had 100 million raised by the FDF and account. So while the debt legal system is playing catch up and we are seeing evidence of it, we still have a responsibility to be very careful with the water. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much for that insight, Prof. Let's hear from Mr. Ngobeni.
Thank you so much, Chair, and good afternoon to all the colleagues sitting at the main venue, as well as the fellow panelists, as well as everyone connected virtually. I think for me, really, I would say we are making progress as government and public sector in terms of implementing, whether it's legislation or sort of policies. Like Prof has said, that we have made some progress in terms of the Popeye, but really, if you were to ask the question, how many government and public sector, or the organs of state that are sort of complying with those, recommendations set in the Popeye Act? I think the definite answer would be we're still lagging behind, so there's still a long way to go. But obviously, if we were to compare South Africa, with the rest of, not even going very far, the SADC region, we have really made so much progress. But I think what is lacking, from a security perspective, especially in government, is an integrated approach, on how do we deal with these cybersecurity incidents, specifically at the national level. I think we've observed in the recent, past, where I think there was an attack on one of the state institution that deals with the legal aspects of the constitution. I think they found themselves wanting, and I think that goes back to say we still lack that integrated approach as the government to deal with these threats, in a very proactive way instead of being reactive. You go inside some of these government or some of these organs of state, you ask if they have an incident response and recovery policies. Those type of things, they don't exist. You call auditors general to come and do audit, and obviously they will follow that, but at the end of the day, we are not sure even they implement those recommendations that comes from the VAPT. So I think we're really lagging behind in terms of having an integrated approach as government to deal with cybersecurity threats. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ngobeni, speaking about the lack of an integrated approach into dealing with these cybersecurities. Earlier, Mr. Zulu mentioned governance, policies, a framework. Then Mr. Mahlaba, spoke about the facilities, to talk to those government frameworks. Now we hear the lack of integrated approach, but we're not getting there where we come up with the best solution. What do you think would be the best solution? Because these threats are threatening even the academia, Prof. They're threatening government departments, academia. They may even threaten the results that come out of these educational institutions. I think from what I hear, it may even be possible for students to go into the systems, change their marks and pass themselves and issue certificates. So how do we deal with that? What's the best approach that could make all these systems of government talk to each other so that one department is not robbed when the other is paying out? For instance, you find that there's a person who's been blacklisted by Treasury, but they are getting work. They are still getting work from other entities whilst they're being blacklisted because the other entities are not aware of such. And then you find that SARS is paying them out whilst the commercial crimes unit has a pending trial going on for their cyber or for their commercial crimes. You know, for me, when I hear integrated approach, I think about, you know, the government departments and their stakeholders interlinking and being able to share information that may be relevant for all these stakeholders to catch these cyber criminals. So what solutions can you suggest, panel members?
Should I go?
Yes, you may proceed, Prof.
Thank you, Chair. I think, you know, you were speaking to a far bigger question that we could possibly solve today, but ultimately you're speaking about, you know, building an entire moral system, you know, within the framework, and of course we know that, you know, criminals have started to leverage the cyberspace. And remember that the criminals, when I think of criminals, I don't mean somebody within the location of our border. Criminals can attack any institution and any system from any part of the world. So there is some element of pollution as well, but mostly, you know, many of our attacks have actually been from outside the country. And for me, it's all about the user. And I keep telling people, you know, that our solution lies between the ears. And we really have to get into the headspace of our users. I think Samelia spoke about incident management system just now. And you know, one of the things that I struggle to do in my research is to try to find evidence approach to cybersecurity attacks, because we need to have an idea of the nature and extent of the attack, so that we can come up with suitable measures and also use them. We can always redact the name of the company, so we have to say something to a particular company, but to understand the type of the attack, the nature of the attack, when it happened, so that we can educate other places within the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Let's hear from Mr. Ledwaba, who's also attending online. What are your views, sir?
Thank you. So basically, just taking it from some of the panel members that they shared, right? Just want to start a little bit, taking us a bit around compliance with the government aspect. They have shared around that it goes beyond just a checklist mode where you respond to auditors. And then what that needs to be understood is that from compliance to actual practical implementations, how technology in the era of 4IR, in the era of artificial intelligence, machine learning, how could those be embedded to then empower what in the area of private sector partner has indicated with the end user limitations. At the end of the day, human beings, as they interact with technologies, we are limited in relation to how we can really apply guiding controls. But when we align, human intelligence or human intuition with technology enablers, it then provides more of a responsive manner. And these guided controls empower to then apply a program or processes that might then enable not only, I'll take it from a KZN perspective or provincial perspective, where you look at the problems with the number of departments touching again in application of processes or guiding controls in the private sector. Those type of relationships, they tend to be enabled by technology. So when you apply controls that will then empower that provides detection and the responses and application of control, it will then ensure that we as a community, not just from a public sector, from an organization perspective, we leverage technology as a means of continuously challenging us with with awareness, with appreciation of where we stand, and these guiding controls, be it legislation or standard, become means of enablement and guidance in the application of a stable, secure platform. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vledwaba. Trying to integrate the theoretical part, the governance part, with the practical facilities and or systems that can be employed for those governance frameworks, and not to be just a ticker box, but to actually protect or seek to protect the cyberspace that we work in. I just want to pose another question. Would you recommend promotion of human-centric security awareness culture? If so, which other methods could possibly contribute to this? I'm not sure if the online colleagues did hear the question. Is the question clear to the members?
Yeah, it is clear.
Okay.
Yes.
Please shoot.
That's okay. Thanks, Advocate. I think it is true that quite a lot needs to be done to the users to make sure that they are aware in terms of what is happening out there with regard to cybersecurity, so that they can able to play their part. However, if I'm looking at the public sector, which is the environment that I'm coming from, we use different technologies to protect our environment, of which every month you have to review or check the logs. A lot of attacks, they are coming from the outside, meaning the cyber criminals are very active out there. And the only thing that we can do is to make sure that we are always one step ahead from them. Because when you only focus on the users and the damage that they can make, it's only limited to internally, because our networks are a little bit secured, even though now we are exposed with the new way of doing things and working virtually. But the cyber threats, it's something that is there and it will always be there, but it's just to make sure that we adopt technologies that can able to protect us. And I think our colleagues that were here earlier, they spoke about SOC, which is Security Operational Center. When you look at investing on the technologies that you can use to protect your environment, it's not feasible to develop your own Security Operational Center as a government department, ETIA. To spend so much money for the SOC, it's not feasible. And also there was something that was said about integrated approach to collaborate with other government departments. The unfortunate reality is that the three spheres of government, I'll talk about KZN, they are not working together. And I think it is beyond the ICT structure to make sure that the ICT of the municipalities, government departments or public entities, they work together. I think even right now, even in a province, we don't have a structure whereby we meet and we discuss all these things so that we can able to collaborate on whatever we do. So up until that is done, we can able to integrate. But just because the threats are there and they're appearing now, I think from my side, going for a managed service in terms of having a SOC, which is 24/7, 365 days, it's something that can work very well for now, because to invest or the capital needed to set up the ICT security division within a department, it is not going to be cost effective or feasible. That's
The SOC. Yes. Thank you so much, Mr. Zulu. Let's hear from Mr. Mahlaba.
Just to add in what Mr. Zulu is sharing about the province, the key into it is really this integration part. Okay, because I mean it's very important to understand that there is no way of investing a capital that can secure at minimum. I mean, I always want to use minimum because I want to use maximum because it's something else. And I always like when you read the digital transformation strategy for the province, you will see some of the articulation around this integration and ensuring the integration layers of the province. More than anything, if you understand again this one approach or one province approach that is being solicited under the NEF Center is actually having that in mind, in actually looking at how does the province have a way of ring fencing at minimum itself as a province of government, and being able to get a way of securing the space of government and the stakeholders therein. I mean, there's government to business. I mean, there's G2, I mean, there's G2C, there's there's G2G, and there's all those particular layers that they've actually articulated within the strategy itself. But one thing that we must never run away from, to what you were talking about, is the fact that there's a human in the middle of this. So we can secure, I mean, same as your house. I mean, you can secure your house in any way that you want to, but there will be one day, one person that you see somebody walking around next to the fence, goes and opens the door without understanding some of the security blind spots before doing that particular part. So we need to ensure that as we continue doing some of this advanced artificial intelligence, all these good security measures that you can put into place just to secure and make sure that things are done in an advanced way, we always remember that there's a human called Sandile who's going to log in from home in these days and be able to start talking in any conference of government and having Alexi listen to it and being able to interpret whatever he's saying and create a database back for Google or somebody else in that particular part. Okay? We must remember there's somebody who's wearing a watch that is internet connected and might not even know what is busy collecting in data as they walk around and doing different things. So I want us to make sure that when you talk about the human-centric part and the task that any government official in security they need to be thinking about, it's really a very big 360 thinking that's supposed to be there. That's why the partnership is not about government partnering itself. It's with the industry, it's with the corporate, it's with your global organizations. And it's so funny that if we don't do it into that level, you're always going to say, in your blind spot, I'm covered. And forget that you're the one's going to pick up the key and go and check who's the person who's outside the door. So that is the very important part. And education plays a very good major role. And one thing that, I mean, in some of the social work which we do as Microsoft, and I mean, with some of the NGOs, is going to the high school and go to the kids. We talk about cybersecurity, get them excited. Because guess what? The very same child, when the mother is struggling with the phone, she will be the first one to tell you, by the way, ma, hey, you cannot change the password now because you might be attacked already. From what I see and what I've heard in the class, or what I've heard when I was doing a debate, or what I heard when I was playing a skit. So this is the thing I think for me is very important to understand. Our human-centric part of doing things is a responsibility of us taking care of our users and taking care of all the near proximity of our users, being the kids, being all the other things that goes with it. So investment, everything needs to be done. But other than anything else, let's just make sure we educate ourselves correctly. We create an environment that makes us to be always alert in some of these particular things. With this,
Always be alert of the human-centric element. You know, I'm coming to my online panel members as we close. This was our last question. You know, a lay person like myself, when we talk about human element, I'm thinking, oh, a middleman, or maybe inside person who's going to give out, some information. But there's more to it than that in the cyber space. Let's hear from Mr. Lidwaba.
Thank you. As the colleagues that just came to mind was that all of us attending here, we have a bank app. And we are quite aware of the sensitivity of that specific asset, and thereby, due to that sensitivity, we protect it. And this is where awareness from our key enablement, especially of users, needs to be considered, making it pervasive, making it a everyday activity. So, for example, with some of the customers and environments that we've been in, we've basically understood that capabilities such as multi-factor authentication to access Teams on your phone before anything else, so receiving an OTP plays a role in the education, because you then are opportune to understand why you then have to add an OTP number to access the specific application, or enabling capabilities such as resetting passwords by yourself as a user. You are then prompted with requirements, And these are exercises that are more practical or continuous, more engaging, that then ensure that on a daily basis, users get the comfort of understanding and being able to qualify of an asset. Without the appreciation by a user that they have an asset, the data that they're accessing, that they're sharing, or the platform that they're working on, it becomes tricky. You can train them to say, this is how to set a password, but what's the reason behind that? Or get, undertake the phishing exercises as well to say, ignore such emails, do not share your password. But without that knowledge or the understanding and appreciation as to why we are protecting the sensitivity of an asset, our users will continuously be duped. They will receive a local email that says 100 million get excited, and then they go repopulating with the details. But if they receive the same email and then start querying them of business information or credentials to log in, someone appreciating the importance of that specific line item won't be able to engage it, and they'll be able to limit it right there. So awareness has to be practical, has to be continuous, has to be informative, and ensure that the users themselves appreciate the importance of the access that they got. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can you get Prof before Mr. Ngobeni? They are closing comments on the issue.
Thank you, Chair. As was well stated before, you are as strong as your weakest link. We can, for instance, use artificial intelligence to identify the online behavior of vulnerable users, and try to correct the deviant online behavior. It may not be deviant on a bad way, but it may be the behavior that may expose them. I tried getting some software service monitoring systems which monitor the behavior of users online. But I must warn you that when we start thinking about throwing AI and everything, if I can monitor your behavior, I can copy your behavior. If I can copy your behavior, I can emulate your behavior. So I can use AI against you, you try to use it against me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ngobeni. Thank you, Prof. Your closing.
Yes, thank you so much, Chair. I think for me already, the whole issue of the users or the human aspect of cybersecurity is very, very important. And simple because, the user, let's say within the context of a business or government, it plays a critical role in the success and failure of that particular business. So a typical example would be, it is easy, for instance, for to try to entice the user through a phishing email as compared to maybe trying to exploit vulnerability within a network. So the first thing that really I would suggest, specifically the government, and seeing that I've spoken about the issue of lack of integrated approach, is that they must firstly, implement what we call security awareness program. First of all the governments or all the organs of state ensure that they have that program in place. It is reviewed periodically to ensure that if the business needs changes, from time to time. I think we all know the government, this energy sector, this retail, this mining, and so forth. So obviously, the assets that you need to protect are different, and the thinking of the users as such, it's slightly different. So if we have that program that we check, continuously to ensure that users understand about this program. And the second point is that we train the users within government on how to identify, how to spot the phishing, for instance. After spotting it, how do you actually go about preventing yourselves from falling victim in it? I think that should be my closing remarks, Chair, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank all the panel members as we close this session. But what we are picking up is that whilst we have to be strong on governance, we also need to be strong on the practical systems to protect us as both the private and the business, the public sector. We may need to even think about the PPPs, partnerships and improve on security awareness programs. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Advocate Mapipa, and thank you very much to the panelists. Can we kindly settle down in terms of our voices to allow the attendees to hear? Thank you very much. We really appreciate the two panels that were before us today, talking about cybersecurity in the private sector as well as public sector. And this topic is so interesting. Actually, I didn't think that issues of cybersecurity are this interesting. I just sitting there thinking about what the both panels are mentioning in terms of the vulnerability. I am going through in my head. I've just opened many tabs. I've just seen so many red lights, you know, in terms of my space, you know, where I work, where, you know, at home. I realize how much vulnerable I am. And this is a very interesting topic. I think the time was too short in terms of the panels. I know that most people would say maybe it was enough, but for us, you know, who still want to hear more and still want to ask questions, it was a little bit short. There are questions on the chat as well. If I may ask panel members to, if you have time, please just go in and check the questions, and if you can be kind to answer or to respond to some of those questions, because I think the questions are relevant, but in the interest of time, we're not gonna be able to answer all of those questions. There's quite a lot of questions. You know, I'm tempted to say that this topic needs to continue. At the end of January or early February, we will be hosting an ICT summit, in ICT in Daba, which is, we are hosting this on behalf of the Office of the Premier, and we will be working with Dubai Trade Port, Office of the Premier, and other companies. We are wishing, I know that Microsoft is a major participant in that, but we wish that the attendees that are here today, if they can be kind to also participate. We have enough space for you to participate in this ICT summit, which will take place next year at the beginning of the year, say end of January or early Feb. And I'm tempted that, to put cybersecurity as one of the sessions, you know, in that ICT in Daba. But I'm just mentioning this so that you can diarize and so that you can go back to your offices and think about how you wish to participate, either by speaking or by exhibiting your products or anything that you may want to do of interest to you. The space is open for you. Moses Kotane will open the platform for you and will make it happen. Now, going to our next item, we have we partnered with, Moses Kotane partnered with Microsoft, and we had an MS Emerging Black Partner Program for KZN Black-owned SMMEs, and we had 15 SMMEs, 15 companies that participated, and out of those 15 companies, each company sent two staff, sort of, or employees or directors or whatever you may call it, to participate in the program. And some of them participants passed, and they qualified for the status, you know, different statuses, silver, gold, and so on. And we have two of those participants today. We would like to acknowledge them, but may I request Mr. Mhlongo, who is our executive for innovation and technology at Moses Kotane Institute, to hand over a certificate to the participants that are here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Program Director. Greetings to everyone, to our panel members, to our guests, and to those that have joined us visually. I think my CEO, Dr. Allenson, has given us a brief on our collaboration with Microsoft. And also I would like to thank Microsoft for this enterprise development that has seen our SMMEs receiving this silver competency from Microsoft. Without wasting of time, I will call upon our SMMEs that partake in this Microsoft Black, it's Microsoft Black program. I'll call upon LA2 system if they are here. Congratulations. I'll also call upon, is it Mechisa or Mechisa or? It's Mechisa. Okay, please come to. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mhlongo, and congratulations to our participants in the Microsoft Emerging Black Partner Program for KZN. And we wish you all the best, in your future activities, working with both private sector and government. Without further ado, may I request Dr. Fikile Ndlovu to give us the closing remarks. And Dr. Ndlovu is joining us online. Dr. Ndlovu?
Thank you very much, CEO, Program Director for Moses Kotane Institute. I do want to extend the gratitude from the Office of the Premier Director General, who was invited to make his closing remarks. I am sending a message to say thank you very much for patience and to appreciate this session that we had in terms of the work that was being done. I also would like to acknowledge the from the Deputy Director General, the representatives that have been speak up, and should. The panel discussion leaders that have been leading these discussions that we are having today, guests, the people who've just received the SMMEs that have just received the certificate. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my delight and pleasure in terms of sharing the thoughts around enclosure of the discussions and the dialogue that has happened on the cybersecurity awareness that we've just discussed. I would like to thank the participants in terms of their contributions, both from the private and the public sector, that we need as we face this challenge that we know that if we left it unattended, it really causes a lot of havoc. We've already seen it causing havoc in terms of what we want with us being more on the digital world. I would also like to applaud Moses Kotane for putting together this discussion in ensuring that we keep ourselves informed in terms of what we need to learn, the lessons, and the insightful thoughts on what we need to do in tackling the issue of cyber crime. We are pleased in terms of the Institute's effort and the topics that have been put together in us discussing this discussion. sorry. Program Director, cybercrime and cybersecurity are very closely interconnected and difficult to separate. And we know that even in the world, in the global stage, from the United Nations in terms of the General Assembly, there are resolutions that were taken around the issue of cyber security and putting that spotlight on the cybercrime as one of the major challenges that we would face globally, and in particular, even us in Africa, and with the African Union also making contributions in terms of how we can tackle this emerging issue, which is now is much more emphasized as we are post the COVID or during the COVID, which has really forced us to think beyond what we were doing. And looking at the African Union Convention on Cybersecurity and Personal Data Protection, looking at establishing that credible framework to guide for organizations in terms of our transactions, protection of personal data, the promotion of cybersecurity, and the issue of e-governance and combating that cybercrime. So what we are saying is that from a global stage to the African Union, to the country, to ourselves, that is a process that has been decided that we really need to be looking at the issue of cybercrime and the issue of the security of that cyberspace. Our national government is also looking at that issue, and we trust that the Department of Communication and Digital Technologies will lead in terms of some of the discussions that have happened here. The province itself, with the advent of the digital transformation strategy, in which one of the pillars is looking at the issue of cybercrime and the cybersecurity, in particular from a governance point. And also the setting up of that ICT steering committee that is chaired by the Director General, which is looking at the entire framework around the cyber, including the cyberspace and the cybersecurity that we are dealing with and that we were discussing today. And I think the importance of that is that as the province is saying it wants to roll out the digital transformation strategy, it recognizes the importance of the cybersecurity and obviously the investment that would need to be done. Hence, the integration that is being led by the DG who was invited in this. And that integrated approach which needs to be engaged on and also needs the multilateral organizations, government, but it also needs public sector with the private sector working together, and also looking at the investment that has been done and how we can all integrate in terms of that work that needs to be done. The public sector and private sector must prioritize cybersecurity and ensure that we protect the data. And the breach, which is what we've seen in some cases, causes really that needs to be protected. Our employees needs to be empowered. But I think as per the discussion that has happened today, it's not just about our employees, but it's also about our communities that needs to be alert and understand the issue of that criminality and how we can protect and mitigate and reduce the risks around. And that culture will have to be developed both in government and in the public sector and in the private sector. And some employees and people, it's unknowingly complicit in that cybercrime activity. And that is why the issue of awareness, which is why this engagement is so important. We know that according to the data in 2017, the data breach investigation report, that more than 90% of cyber attacks were traced back to human error. And again, the engagement today in this dialogue has come out and saying there is a human element that we must constantly be bringing back and be saying how do we make all of us aware and intensify that, because the majority of our prevention will come from that. Program Director, this dialogue hosted at this critical time where we've seen some of this criminal activity is essential, and we need to take it beyond the dialogue and sort of look at the implementation of the programs that would look at that. We know the effect if we are not aggressive in addressing that around the loss of intellectual property, and the business confidential information, the issue of personal loss for people, the opportunity cost and reputational damage that occurs. We want to confirm, and I would like to confirm, the awareness is important, and the issue of design and implementation of the programs must be rolled out, must be done, and we must roll that out with the regular updating, meaning it will have to be an ongoing process. Our employees, they can play a very crucial role because they reach to our citizens who are our customers, and they reach our communities. So they are also a very important element of being educated, that we can then take this awareness, which would then be beyond the employees, but we can use them to make the information reach our people. We do acknowledge from the public sector that we would want to use the agility that is found within the cloud technology, and we want to support that, and we are supporting this, but we also then agree that there has to be a greater cyber resilience to be able to protect the systems in our infrastructure. We do need strategies at a high level. We do need implementation to ensure compliance, and the public sector policy to ensure that we protect our cyberspace. We also need technology suppliers that are prepared to work with us. I think the important part is further engagement is that we do need that partnership to ensure that we can achieve this. This means, therefore, that both private and public sector could share their resources for investigations and to expanding cybercrime capacity building and the cybersecurity. And the issue of sharing the resources is important if we are to achieve this, because in the long run, this is for all of us, and it's for both the country, our citizens, and ourselves to protect and to ensure that this economy continues to thrive. When we work together in partnership, we will all win. Thank you very much for this engagement and very insightful engagement today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ndlovu. We appreciate your closing remarks. And this is Dr. Ndlovu from the Office of the Premier. And we will, before I close the session, I cannot leave this platform without saying this, that Moses Kotane Institute is an institute for provincial government under the Department of Economic Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs, and we are mandated to conduct research that responds to the economy of the province. And we do research on strategic sectors, on innovation and technology, and on maritime, but we also do business intelligence reports, and we also coordinate activities for innovation and technology. And this is a reason why we are hosting this today. It's because of this second pillar, which is innovation and technology. Thank you very much. We will now be going for refreshments, whilst I'm asking IT to play the video, and those that are interested to watch the video, please do. And those that will be going for refreshments, they are right on the side out of the door to the left. And with that, I would like to thank all the participants, and I would like to especially give thanks to the two teams at Moses Kotane, which is the team of innovation and technology under the leadership of Mr. Vusim Hlongo, as well as the team for corporate services under the leadership of Advocate Lihlema Pipa. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much. I thank you so much, and please do not leave without eating something, because one, that will not be considered as a spirit of Ubuntu, and two, that will be fruitless and wasteful expenditure. If you have to take it home, please do. Thank you very much.